What's going on, y'all? My name is Zach.
I'm Jacob.
And this is the FMG Instructor Podcast. And welcome to those of you on YouTube and those of you guys just listening to us.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what the heck is FMG Instructor Podcast? Well, we're Fortville Music Garage. And that's where we are. We're in one room in FMG.
Yep.
And we're in Jacob's room here.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're down here. This is our main studio room, mixing room. It's also the room I teach out of, which is fun to have little kids get some time on a console and some nice gear.
A lot of nice gear in here. Too nice for students, but it's cool. It's cool that we use it for students. We're pretty odd. So we're going to just talk about the podcast in like a weird, not necessarily just conversational way, but like we're trying to include those who are watching this and just listening to this. We are a different type of lesson studio. I've been personally teaching for like 22 years. And I teach all kinds of things, and I've had a few different runs personally at owning a music lesson studio. One other one which Jacob actually taught for me at, and that version of who I was versus who I am now is 100% different. And there's a lot of like life reasons that happened, but probably one of the most dynamic things that's happened in just the season is that my wife and we made a choice to do things differently. And in this season, we've brought along a lot of values and business principles and just leadership principles to the table, and looked at our team and gave an opportunity to say, this is where we're going to go. And the growth that we've seen from that is just, it's pretty wild.
It's incredible.
So from my standpoint, like as an owner, I'm one of the owners of Fortville Music Garage. My goal with this space is to make sure that every person and family here is loved, valued, and cared for. Those are our core values. And what we want to do with the success that we've had here is kind of branch off and just have a conversation about like what makes this lesson studio that is in a very small town works so well and have so much influence, because we do. We do, and as you get into this podcast and our YouTube channels, and as we grow, you're going to find out like a lot of the relationships we have in the music industry at large. But just from the standpoint of being a business in a town, we have a lot of influence, and it's pretty cool and unique.
It's incredible. Yeah. It seems that as time has moved forward, pretty much every event that is in our area comes to us for that kind of guidance, and whether it's sound or music or just being organized. Yeah,
and that's a lot of pressure. Like from the standpoint of like things that you have to do as a business owner, right? Like when you're just teaching, it's one thing. Like you're dealing with your schedule, you're dealing with student behavior, you're dealing with the content and your lesson programming, and you're dealing with your own mood and your own battles of like finances and all the things. But like when you're the business owner and like that's what you do, and then you're also like the quote unquote authority or the go-to in the area of like events and like community functions, which our town does a lot of. There's a lot of pressure there. We've actually been invited to do a lot of things that we couldn't do before we made the changes that we've made now, and invited the people that are here now to do. And Jacob's one of these people. Jacob, I'm just going to toot his horn because he's not going to do it for himself. Nashville session player. You've heard him on the radio. You've heard him do all kinds of things. His wife is equally talented and has done all kinds of things you have heard and you didn't know she did it. He is a powerhouse of music theory. He's an incredible guitar player, a great drummer, an awesome friend, and a new dad. And not a new teacher, but new to this method. So I'm going to talk a lot here on this podcast today, just kind of like laying groundwork. We've already said the kind of the direction of our studio is love, valued, and cared for. And that stems from the very first interaction with like a student family. It stems from our social media. It stems from the conversations we have with our students. And I'd just like to point the question maybe towards Jacob, and he can answer this from an instructor standpoint. Like, how do you feel loved, valued, and cared for from myself, and from the other instructors here, as well as from Krista, who's the CEO of this place.
Yeah, so I've worked in several other studios, some that you've owned and some that other people have owned.
Owned poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah, owned poorly. Successful in some ways, but owned poorly.
Yeah, financially successful. That's about it.
Yeah.
The difference here, the main differentiator, has been not only do we have support as teachers, and we have somebody that, like, if we're struggling with a student who maybe is so nervous they're not going to talk, they're not even going to say a word, they're not even going to look up at us, or maybe they're just struggling with the confidence of playing in front of people, or maybe they're struggling with they think we're old and they don't like us.
Your students think I'm old.
My students all think you're very old, which is amazing.
It's terrible. I'm not that old. I mean, I'm kind of old, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm old now.
And
I got wrinkles.
But knowing that I've got somebody that is always going to have my back and can come support me. I think of one student in particular. Before we built this room and Zach's room over here, we had a much smaller space, and like 6 or 7 of us were trying to teach out of, and it was chaos.
It's a nightmare.
And it involved switching spaces sometimes to accommodate. Like, we have band rehearsals and stuff in here too. So if there's a band that needed to rehearse and I had a bigger room, well, then I got kicked out of my room and I had to go teach somewhere else. I remember I was teaching in Zach's old space, and I had a student who didn't even want to hold their guitar. He set it flat on his lap, and I asked him why. He said, "Well, it's too heavy to hold." I was like, "Okay, well, you're 10. Like, you can hold a guitar." It was a Strat copy that, you know,
probably 7-8 pounds, something like that.
And I was at a loss, and it was at the end of a long day for me. I had taught, I don't know,
probably 13.
I think I had 12 or 13 before him, and I was like, you know what, dude? Fine, just hold it. And I just caught Zach's eye as he was walking between spaces, and he came in, and man, the encouragement that you gave him was not only so good for him to hear, but it was so good for me to hear in that moment of like, that's right. This is why we do this. Yes, we want everyone to learn their instrument proficiently and well, but just to know that, like, hey, he's having a bad day, and it's okay to take a couple minutes. Let's talk about that. Let's be involved in their lives in a way that is actually meaningful, and not like, dude, put your second finger on the 3rd fret of the low string because we got to make this chord. Like, come on. It's okay to say, hey, what's going on at school? What's wrong? And you've kind of given us that power to be more than just the dude yelling at them to put a finger somewhere on what string and what fret and whatever. But you've given us that power to actually have influence on their lives and participate in their day-to-day interactions.
That, like, so I remember that moment very clearly, and I thought you might say that today. Yeah. I didn't know if you would or not, and I didn't know if that story meant anything, but now I do know the impact. So for context, Jacob is like I've already said, he's a great guitar player, and he's actually a very good teacher. But he's taught in a lot of ways, and I've taught in a lot of ways where the main thing is always musicality. Mm-hmm. It's always the doing. And it's always like input here, A plus B equals C. Yeah. And then it's like this fight between like what the instructor wants and then versus the expectation that the parent wants. And
versus the expectation of their previous instructor who was different than you that wanted 100% them to learn a different way.
And then that's different than the expectations of the student that's sitting in front of you. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And that's something that we have been very intentional in building this place from our, I'm going to call it a restart. recently, but like or a reset. We'll call it the Great Reset. And the intentionality piece of love, valued, cared for, it stems from the idea that my expectations, that the parents' expectations, and the students' expectations need to be the same. Yeah. And that what happens in a lesson studio in the booth has nothing to do with how good they are at the instrument.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard when like you've gone to school to be a professional musician. Like you just want the person in front of you to love it like you do. But the truth is that they're not going to. But what they will do is they will show up and they will be with you, and you will have influence in their life as either the cool old dude that I am now, or uncool old dude, whatever, or the young hip guy, or really talented girl that you could sit with. That person now has influence in their life to say, hey, how is your day? And what's going on in your week? You seem kind of disconnected. Like, was it tough? Do you not want to be here today? And like, or do you just not want to communicate today? Are you struggling mentally or struggling emotionally? And like sometimes like we have students that show up here and they're 8 years old and they just cry for no apparent reason in our booth. And it's because, and this is called tying back to that love, value, cared for piece, is that when the mission is that they are a happy, healthy, whole human, and that is the only way that they can be a healthy musician and actually grow and fail forward, and that's the win, no one can be upset about it. And the student wins every time because they get exactly what they need. It might not always be the best teaching. It might not always be the most perfect technique. It might not always be the outcome, but we help our students kind of learn that it's the choices and the actions that they do that will eventually produce the outcome, and that them showing up for themselves to an instructor who is there for them on purpose for them as a human and not just as a musician. And then the parent also knows that because they got that in the very first contact. They got that in an automated email about a vision and how to come alongside them. They understand the pillars of student progression that we do here before they ever showed up. When everybody's on the same page, there's one purpose. That purpose is to love, value, and care for that kid. And that is the win. That's different than anything I've ever done before. And because what it feels like, and I know you struggle with this, there's Marcus struggle with this, Eric struggle with this, like I don't know that I'm doing enough. I don't know if I'm teaching enough material. I don't know if they're getting enough from me. And the truth is, the moment is enough. As long as you're 100% present, right? Like you're there on purpose with a purpose.
Teaching on purpose.
It's a different idea.
It's so different. I mean, I think of the different places that you and I have worked and you and I have taught in, and I think of this is years back. You remember Frankie?
Oh, yeah. I love Frankie. Hi, Frankie. If you see this podcast, Frankie, or the YouTube video, I just want to tell you I love you. I miss you. And I hope you're doing well. You're a great kid. Well, you're not a kid. You're a man now.
I was going to say, he's
a man.
He's an adult. He was a kid at this point. And I remember sitting down with him and pulling out a Telecaster. And he'd be like, you got a flying V or something? I'm like, no. And he's like, I want you to teach me on a flying V. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to. And then I remember pulling out these like old Scotty Anderson songs, and he's like, can we not learn country? And I was like, I'm not teaching you this song. I'm teaching you like a technique, and I'm teaching you whatever. And so he's like, I just want to learn Megadeth or whatever it was. And then he came in and like had these Yngwie Malmsteen licks like down. And I'm like, that's not what we're working on, but that's awesome. And then he would get so frustrated. And like all I cared about was like he learned why he could play so well.
Yeah.
And all he cared about was playing so well. Did not care about the why. And I remember being so frustrated with that. And like thinking of some of my current students now of like, you know, I've got some drum students who play circles around me, but they don't know how to teach themselves.
They can't push themselves forward
to move. And so it's so funny that like I remember Frankie was kind of that way. Like, speed-wise, he could play circles around me. He had no idea what he was playing. And he probably does now, because he was the kid who went home and practiced 10 hours a day.
All the time.
But it's just so amazing that, like, now when... what else was I going to say?
What is the difference you're talking about?
Yeah,
it's the difference between them.
Because
he's a great kid, and you enjoyed him.
I loved my lessons with him. But now when I come in and I have somebody who is that proficient, but doesn't immediately want to jump into guitar, but maybe like, hey, I got fired today, or I did whatever today, and like needs 10, 20, sometimes the whole 30 minutes to just get that off their chest. I know that you're not going to come in and be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you gotta work on guitar.
Yeah, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, because I remember the first week we opened at this location, you were a little frustrated with me on some of my students, because I was like, yeah, shut it. Like, we got to play. Like, stop talking.
But it's a transition. And maybe you're listening to this. Like, if you're likely an instructor or a parent or something like that. You're watching this. Like, it's a shift to go from typical business platform of like A plus B equals C. I'm paying money. Here's the lesson. They're supposed to be learning. You need to shut up and do what I tell you to do. And I can tell you, I've gone toe to toe with parents. And Krista, my wife, she's the CEO here. She has too. That have told us like, no, you need to do this. And the answer is bye.
Yep.
Like, we don't need you here. And the reason is because you don't get it. You don't get that your student is at school unhappy. You don't understand that she has everything in the world, but she is lonely. You don't understand that she's struggling with depression. You don't understand that we are the people that are minding the gap. You just don't get it. You don't get it. You send her to do sports. You send her there and freaking 30 million things, and they can't practice a guitar, and you're pissed about that. Whatever, dude. 30 minutes with us is the best practice time they're going to get. Why? Because repetition plus consistency. Just lost my own line. Repetition plus consistency is the mark of a professional. There you go. Good. Normally I'm just like really wordsmithy. You're really welcome though.
Yeah, you
normally I just like right out. I just like like a reboot moment. and it is. We repetition bleeds consistency, and that is the mark of a professional. There it is. And that's what matters to us. What matters is giving them a space where they can fail. One of the things that we do here at Fortville Music Garage is that on the website at fortvillemusicgarage.com, we have a blog. And in that blog, there is a link, and it's called Failure is the Best Option. And this sums up, like, if you're struggling as an instructor and you can't figure out why you can't keep students, if you can't figure out why you're so miserable as an instructor, why you feel so empty at the end of the day, why you feel like you're not getting anywhere, and like, oh, woe is me, and I don't have the gigs I want, I don't have the students I want, you need to go read that blog, because failure is the best option, not just for your students, but for you, because it shows you that there is the idea of best. It gives light to the idea that I am human, and it builds perseverance and grit, and also shows us how to have grace. And that's what a lot of our students don't understand. Like, everything's so instantaneous and so easy. Like, they have iPads and they have screens. And they've got Oculus and like everything. And back to that student you had, like that was part of it. Like, this was one of the hardest things he's ever done because it's tactile. It hurts. It fights back. Man, it's tough. And that's a different mindset when those expectations are shifted from both the instructor and the student and the parent.
And I think about how many years I taught at that last studio that I was at, and I hated it. And I didn't even have, like, here I have 40, 50 students sometimes. There I had 12, and I was overwhelmed. Like, I often teach 12 a day, or 14 a day, or 15 a day, depending on the day.
No, I actually, that's so funny.
And, like, I just think of, like, this is so overwhelming. And I realized the pressure was, well, so-and-so can't play Cliffs at Dover. Why can't they play Cliffs of Dover? We've been working on it for 4 weeks. I can play Cliffs of Dover. Why can't you? Like, and then I had that pressure, and the owner of that studio was like, well, you know, are they having fun? Cool, they'll get there. And that was just always infuriating to me. But he's right. He's right.
He was right.
And him and I are still really good friends to this day. And we talk about that sometimes. But like all my metrics were based on how good was that student. I never checked in how their day was, how school was, how their job was. I never checked in. And that is such a huge difference. And like, I think about some of the students I have now, like I've got some students, you do too, who if one of them's behind the camera right now, who if they stopped taking lessons here, they would still be a lifelong friend.
For sure. Easily.
Yeah.
Santiago, that's right at you.
Yeah, we're looking at you, buddy.
We're looking right at Santiago, like your cameraman. No, yeah, you know, and I'm just looking back, like you mentioned you're teaching like 12 and 13, 14 a day. I was here from 8 o'clock yesterday morning until
Your
8
Mondays
at night.
Crazy.
And like, I'm tired, but it's not like I used to be. I used to be miserable.
Yeah.
And like, and I guess, and that's another point. Like for this podcast, this is for instructors, right? Like primarily, like we want to like help encourage, and like there's a real problem in the private music studio space, in a lot of different ways, and we want to talk about all those ways. But like, I was miserable. I own this, and I was miserable. Because I wasn't doing it for the right reasons.
Nope.
I was, and like, even though the heartbeat was kind of there, and I was still who I was not who I am at the same time. Like, I was doing the thing, and I was doing the thing with the students, right? I was making them feel loved, valued, cared for, and seen. I didn't put words to it yet then, but I was miserable. I taught so much, and I always thought like, oh, I'm empty, and I need to do less, and I need to find other people to do stuff more for me in place of me. Never stopping to realize like that, dude, just shut up.
Yeah.
You are changing lives, not because you're special,
right?
Because you're consistent,
right?
And you show up.
Yeah.
Like that is.
And you almost quit last year.
I did.
You almost threw in the towel.
We did.
And did everything. For those of you who don't know us, there was a big fire at the studio at the beginning of 2023.
11:42 p.m. on December 31st, 11:42 p.m. December 22nd. December 31st. There you go. New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve 2022. So the obviously 2023 is when we were dealing with it. And there were a couple months there that you were like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything. We're not gonna touch this again. And I was like, all right. Like, I don't like teaching. That's cool.
Yeah.
And man, it's
wild. It really is just it's nuts. And you're gonna find these like out why it's so different, and like because you're just meeting us and you're like, I don't know, these people are like freaking nuts to me. Like I just go to my blank studio and with my blank students, and I like they're learning Tchaikovsky, you know, and whatever else.
Right.
It's just what we have here is very special, and we want to share it with the world.
Yeah.
And there's such a space and a need for actual training of an instructor for them to have conversations. I'm a part of hundreds of groups that I never post in because for music instructor, whether it's piano and drums and guitar, there's all kinds of groups on Facebook out there. But it always points back to a couple different directions. It's always just a bunch of whiny babies that just, you know, and they're worried about like their rates and stuff. And like, listen, I'm not saying your rates don't matter and like your problems don't matter, but like the conversation always is super self-centered. It's not about how do I show up in the community? How does my lesson studio affect the culture of the school system that they're in? How do my students change the world after they've spent time with me? Because if that is the conversation, you're not freaking worried about stuff. You're not worried about the little things, because what you're doing will end up leading to all the outcomes you want anyway, which is financial security, which is opportunity for influence, which is invitation to be a part of things that you have no business being a part of, which happens to us all the time. The relationships that we have make no sense.
No.
I am nobody, absolutely nobody. But we get treated like somebody.
Yeah, we do.
And I don't know why, other than the fact that it's goodwill. Alex Hormozy talks about that, just putting goodwill. An unreasonable amount of a delusional amount of goodwill, and things will happen. And no one wants to do that. Why? Because it's hard. It is hard. I am tired from it. Sometimes I am annoyed by it.
And I'll tell you, and this, it could be teaching lessons, it could be insurance, it could be whatever. Whatever you're doing, when you're putting others first, and when because obviously any kind of work is solving a problem, right? Your job is to do this, which solves this.
That problem solution cycle,
right? And so if your solution is always putting other people first, and always caring about them and what's going on in their lives and how we can better their lives, of course we'll be taken care of in the long run.
100%.
And it may not seem that way.
It may not look like what you want it to.
Yeah. It may not be that you're making a multiple six-figure income or whatever, but it absolutely will bring more value to your life. It'll bring more value to other people's lives, and everybody generally will want to be around you and want to be your friend, because you make them feel important, because people are important. And it
Whoa, hold on. You mean the parents that annoy you and the student who's like
absolutely
like super annoying and won't stop talking or doesn't do anything right or took lessons for a year and can't play anything because you're a bad teacher?
Yep, absolutely. When you start treating people like they're important and actually giving people respect and actually taking time out of your day to care about somebody, it's gonna be all right.
Changes everything.
It's gonna be all right.
It's always in the little things. It's always in the little things. Love, valued, cared for. This is what that looks like. Everything Jacob's talking about. Love, the word love is sacrifice. That is what that means. And if you cannot be honest with yourself as an instructor and know that like you're here on selfish motive and you need to show those the door every second of every day, and that is hard. That is hard because you know what? I do like having nice guitars, and I do like having certain things in life, and I do like sparkly diamond rings. Like I am bougie. It's just what it is. I'm blue collar bougie because I grew up on a farm. And my dad's the hardest worker I know. He worked at GM.
You're a bougie boy.
I am bougie, and it's okay. It's okay because that's not the main thing, though.
Yeah.
That's not the main thing. It is an outcome of goodwill at some point. Yeah. Most of the time, not in my timeline. And that's okay, too. Love, valued, cared for looks like our whole team struggling to cope with the idea that this is supposed to be different. And that's hard. We've all had conversations upstairs. Yeah. One of the funniest things that, and I think leave with this, is we have a phrase around here that goes like this: slow plus ugly equals awesome. And it is the coin phrase, and all the materials we create. It is at the top right corner. We have T-shirts in our swag shop that's got it. And slow plus ugly equals awesome just simply means this: anytime you're learning something new, it's slow. It's going to be ugly. We're going to suck and fail, but we're going to feel awesome because we tried. And that premise of like failure is the best option, love, valued, cared for, and then weaponizing a phrase to overcome insecurity, like love, like slow plus ugly equals awesome. Like that's a weapon, because like every time a student starts to feel like they're bad at something, they get to go, hold on, my instructor told me this is going to happen. I know this is not going to sound good. I know this, and it might be now or it might be a year. I don't know when, but it will not anymore. But I'm going to feel awesome the entire time because I am not measured on my outcome. As a student, I am measured upon the relationship, the trust between my instructor and myself and my instrument and myself and my parent, because we're all on the same page, moving in the same direction. And that's tough. It's tough to do. It's tough to live that. It's tough to teach through that mechanism and that lens. And the best way I've ever, like, and it was a lightning strike moment, like we were talking earlier, normally I'm good with words and like wordsmith. And I had a moment, I was teaching one of our instructors, like just conversing, and we were talking, and there's been a lot of growth here, which has posed a lot of problems because this is a small space. Used to, we had like 3,200 and some square foot, and now we have like 1,400, and that's after the expansion that just happened a couple weeks ago. Used to, we had like 700 square foot, and there's 7 of us teaching. Like and we have hundreds of students. It's a tough deal. However, one of the problems that arose from that was sound and distraction. Like it was a little loud, depending on if Jacob or I were both playing drums, or there's a band rehearsal. And one of our instructors here is a high-level human. Like he was in a really high-level, like executive position at a company, and very corporate, big company, very, very high-level leader, and he's good musician. And he problem solves for us sometimes, like, and he thinks through stuff. But one of the things that he was struggling with was, he was like, man, if I'm having trouble, the student's having trouble, and if the student's having trouble, everybody's having trouble. And if everybody's having trouble, everybody's experience is bad. Like that's like the tailwind he went through, because he's a business guy, you know. And like his perspective was upon that part of the experience through one human. And when we were talking, I started to uncover this, and I go, cool. I go, do you know that we've never had a complaint about this specific thing, about like the volume or anything like this? I said, we all recognize it. And I said, do you want to know why? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to know why. And I go, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And he's like, help me understand. And I go, do you remember when we were kids? And some of you guys remember this and some of you won't. But like, I don't know if even you do. When I'd go to McDonald's, and I would sit in a seat at McDonald's in Anderson, Indiana, in like North Anderson. Yeah. The seats used to be a hamburger.
Yeah, I remember.
I
lived in the neighborhood behind that.
Yeah, so the seats used to be a hamburger. Yeah. It was like the Hamburglar, right? And there was like all these different characters. They were the seats, and it looked a certain way. And I remember how it smelled. I remember how they felt. As an adult, I remember going there, like a younger adult, you know. And we're the hamburger seat. We're the hamburger seat because we're different, and we give the opportunity for different, and that difference and love, value, cared for is enough to overcome any obstacle, because it's not about that thing. We're the hamburger seat. And also, to that point, like if you're struggling in a studio that's loud and you're like, man, I don't think anybody's getting any value of this, remember that music is imperfect, and everywhere you're ever going to be is going to be loud and full of distractions. So if you can't keep your happy about teaching in a loud environment, just remember every bar gig you ever played in. Just remember every church that ever had squealy monitors and that was imperfect. Just remember your practicing amp in your room, or your untuned drum head, or the guy down the street that was constantly revving his motor while you're trying to practice the piano. That was me. That's what music is. It is loud. It is inconvenient. And I'm not saying there's not things you should do, measures we have taken. We have taken huge measures, and we've done some very different things.
If you knew the amount of clear sonic panels we have,
you'd be staggered.
Think of whatever a mega church has, and then double it. And then that's one room.
That's because Clear Sonic loves us, and we love Clear Sonic.
Yeah.
Shout out to Clear Sonic. Yeah. They're the best people in the whole world out in Ohio. We love them. Music is not perfect. Life is not perfect. And what we've got to do is give every single one of us, including us, and especially those in like are the core group of leadership here now. And I include all of our instructors in that. They are equal partners in that, because I always don't have the answers. Sometimes they have the answers. And wise counsel is that we should be the first to listen in the room and the last to speak. We are going somewhere new because everyone's making a choice to. And you can too. And you can too. And you are. He's doing things that are, right now, he's super uncomfortable. This is not what he wants to do with his life. But he's here because he believes in what we're doing. Slow plus ugly equals awesome. Right? And that's what this looks like. This is going to be clunky. It's going to get better as we go. And I want you to also know something. This is unsponsored content. we are doing this because we believe in what we do, and we have a ridiculously large vision to change the world and to change your world. And the only way that you can help us currently is to go to fortvilmusicgarage.com and shop. We have amazing swag, and it is high quality stuff, and we print it all in-house. We do the work. So we have custom Chuck Taylors, we've got tons of t-shirts, hoodies, all those types of things, and we make it in-house. So it's pretty much made to order, and sometimes it takes a little while to get the stock in, but nothing is just cheap quality. There's no spring tree here, nothing like that, or spring tea, whatever that stuff is. Used it once, it was terrible. So that's how you support this place, is go buy swag. We do have courses that are on the way. Our entire squad of instructors are working on courses, because everything we do for all of our students is handmade in-house right here. All of our materials, all of the lesson programming, lack thereof lesson programming. We have a way. You'll learn the way. It's cool. If you don't like it, buzz off. Don't care. Good day, sir.
Good day. I said good day.
I said good day. But if you got any questions, if you'd like to know more about what we do, I mean, feel free to drop a line on the email and the website. But best thing you can do is buy some shirts, share this, like, subscribe, hit the bell, all the things. And if you're a podcast, please review. Leave a review. Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's all. We're going to have so much content on the nitty gritty of what we do on a daily basis. And just because we are a different type of studio, we still experience all the same instructor struggles that
100%
that every studio experiences.
100%. We have a show this weekend, and I am
not
nervous. At best. We rented a theater. We did a whole thing. And it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
But yeah.
I'm sure somebody can empathize with that long pause and that facial expression.
Well, stay tuned. Hit us up. We're going to try to have weekly podcasts here for you, and really diving into the weeds of what we do and how we honestly how we progress through things differently than others.
100%. And you know what? Listen, if you're hearing this, you're watching this, just remember one thing, that you are loved, valued, and cared for. If we've never met you before, you matter. If you're a brand new instructor, you matter. You can do this. This is hard work. And it is not for the faint of heart. If you're in this and you're a mess, you're not alone. Reach out. We have more coming. And we are here to help. Love, valued, and cared for. It's who you are. And ride with us. It's going to be good stuff. Catch y'all later.
See y'all.
Peace.